Welcome back to my channel, everyone. Step on in with Stephanie. Well, today I think I would like to start my first story, and I would like to start it off with um, falling in love at my age with a gangster. Okay, so I'm gonna call this gangster love at my age. So, I really don't know where to start, so bear with me, okay? But I just feel that as I share my story, it'll be a blessing to someone else, that it may help them because things happen in life. We're human, so we're subject to even make mistakes like we do every day. At least I make them every day. But I just wanted to share this. Um, I'm still healing through it. I'm still, still because it's a process, okay? And I've been with this individual for going on 5 years, almost 5 years. We're not together now, but it's just been a long journey, and from a person that was in church, and I, served the Lord and raised my kids in church and did a lot of godly things. I even opened up the church for prayer on Friday. So I was a very dedicated person to the Lord, you know, when I did give my life over to Him. But so, let me see, I'm going to try to not make this very long. But after the church, well, me and my husband, I was married before all of this, and he moved one direction and I moved in another direction. He moved south and I moved north, okay? And with me coming up north, this is like the north area, you know, is where I ran into um, my gangster love, okay? And we're gonna call him Mr. J, okay? I ran into Mr. J, and it was like it was like something like unforbidden fruit that you just wanted, because he was tall, and he was the color that I was looking for, the tall chocolate, like that. So something that I always wanted to sample, but it just never worked out, and it was like, oh, like when I was growing up, I'm from South Central, right, Los Angeles, and so my mother used to always tell me, "Oh, stay away," because I grew up in the area for the Crips and stuff. They used to always hang on the corner where I live, right? And so my mother used to tell me, "Oh, don't talk to those bad boys. Stay away from them. This, that, and the other." But I always liked to just one. His name was Sleepy. He had light brown eyes, and he was dark and tall. A little older than me. And I always had a little crush on him. So I used to braid his hair, and so. But anyway, so I ended up moving from South Central and moving. I think we moved to the Valley, which is um, in Southern California. But anyway, so to make a long story short, okay, so I grew up and got married eventually and had my children. But I just want to fast forward to the part where I met my Mr. J, okay, my gangster love. I met him. And it was in an area that I would never really go to too much, but I have a brother that lived in that area. So I was visiting my brother, and it was during the pandemic time. I had just moved out of my house and I was downsizing because all of my children are grown, right? And because if they're all grown, I wanted to like branch out and just discover who I was because I always been married. I got married at 21, and so I was married over 30 something years, 30 years, And so I wanted to do something different. And I had a friend that was in trucking, so he was a truck driver. And he used to like, he called himself helping me out, give me little, this, that, a few dollars here and there. But I was like, he was like trying to breadcrumb me, right? And me, the way I think, I feel like this: what you do, a person could do, I could do too. You know what I'm saying? Not in trying to be competitive like that, not that at all, but just knowing who I am. I believe what one person do, the next can do too. It might take me a little bit longer, or it might, I might just do it a little faster. Who knows? but I feel like I could do it too. I said, instead of you like nickel and diming me, why don't I just go to truck driving school and learn the course and learn how to drive, and I could make what you're making, you know? And I'm like, we both can be like, having what you got, and that's the way I was thinking. So the pandemic hit. I moved out of my house. I just moved out of my house, and you know, I wasn't able to transition over to the apartment because like everything shut down during the pandemic. So I felt myself moving in with my brother in the area that I would normally not go to, right? So it was kind of like the hood, a little bit, But anyway, so I went, and as I was getting out my car, because I started driving for, I think it was Lyft at the time. I was driving for Lyft, and as I was getting out, um, as my Mr. J, he parked next to my brother's stall. So I seen him and I was checking him out, So he looked kind of good, was tall, you know what I mean, and chocolate, and knowing that I had no business even looking that way, but I did, and I wouldn't let nobody else know that's what I was doing, but that's what I did. And from there, he was checking me out too. We was checking each other out, So he was flirting a little bit, and I was flirting a little bit, not nothing really major, but just being overly friendly at the time. And so he used to walk me at night, since I was living with my brother. He used to walk me to my brother's apartment. He used to walk me there and make sure I got inside safely, because it'd be like 2 in the morning when I used to stop driving, 'cause it was just me, So he would, walk me to the stairs or whatever, and then he would text me because somehow we switched numbers because I was making like masks, for the pandemic, and so I gave him my number, and then he texted me and he said, I would have gave you a hug and a kiss goodnight, but I knew you wouldn't want nobody like me of my kind to touch you, And I was like, I don't know about that, but he didn't know what I was checking him out too. And he was checking me out, right? And so one thing led to another. We eventually became friends, and he would come and help me out every now and again. And then I finally did move from my brother, and I had to move in with my son because, like I said, it was a pandemic, and it was just too much. So I ended up moving with my son for a few days. And during that time, me and Mr. J, we used to go walking all the time. So we used to go walking at the park. We used to meet up at the park and go walking and stuff, and talk about our little dreams and stuff. And so I finally moved into my apartment, and he made a move. We used to watch TV, but he had something up his sleeve the whole time, right? And I did too, kind of. You know what I'm saying? I was just kind of like feeling myself. I wanted to kind of like test the water a little bit, And so, I was like, oh, I remember one time I asked him, could he like give me a massage? My shoulder was hurting. It really wasn't hurting, but I just did that, But we were friends, so we just kept it at that. So eventually, we used to come over, watch movie night, and put these little sexy movies on, little nasty movies on, and I said, why you, then we watching this stuff. Then next thing I know, he called himself falling asleep, and one thing led to another, okay? And now I'm here. So it never should have really probably went as far as it did, because apparently he was already involved in a relationship, all right? Maybe so, because it was a player, it was against love, right? And he was like the guys, he reminded me so much of the guys in South Central where I grew up. That's what really attracted me to him, because he was one of the boys my mama said stay away from, right? So I was attracted to him. And he would come over at night. I would have him come over at night, but I was like, you got to hurry up and leave, because I didn't want nobody to see him come out of my place, because of who I call myself, like, I'm this woman, that have respect and morals and all this stuff, like, right. So, and he wanted to hurry up and leave too, because he was lying to me the whole time, but I didn't really care, because it was just like a friends with benefit type of deal with me, and it was the same way with him. So we both was like on the same page. He was playing the game and I was playing one too. I just wanted to, get just test it out every now and again. So anyway, so we end up getting a little bit serious, and I started really getting a lot more serious as well. And then one thing led to another. I mean, I used to take chances with him. I mean, I used to do stuff that I would have never had done. He used to, man, listen, I used to do some stuff with him. I mean, I'm just saying, for me to even be in his presence, knowing, like I said, I was the woman that opened the church and for prayer and all of that stuff, right? Listen, I went back to the hood because since I grew up in South Central, I knew some stuff myself. I used to do my little dirt too. So and then that was just the way it was. Okay, I grew up in the street, so but God transformed my life eventually when I gave my life to Him. And another thing that kind of attracted me to Mr. J was that he had a good heart. I used to watch him how he used to help people. I used to watch, he used to like the little ladies and stuff, old ladies that would get out, have bags. He would hurry up and go get their little bags for them and help. I said, look at his heart. So I kind of fell in love with his heart, with the inner person, not so much the outer person, even though I was attracted to the height and the chocolate, but it was his heart that I really fell in love with. I said, he got a good heart. And then one time we had went to church, right? And on the way back from church, he started opening up to me, telling me about his life story and how he was in church and how the things that how he had gave his life over to God and how he had to let his girlfriend go and he had to live celibate, and just the whole thing because he was really dedicated and wanting to get closer to the Lord, right? So when he said those things, and then he looked over, he said, we're gonna get baptized." He didn't know I was baptized like 3 times already. He didn't know. I didn't tell him my history. I didn't tell him that part of my life. I didn't, because most of the time when people find out, who I really was, like in church and stuff, they would run the opposite way, right? So I try to hide that from him. I didn't want him to really know. Just like he was trying to hide who he was, really. He was trying to hide who he was from me. And he was trying to hide the fact that he was saved at one point and he was living for God. So he was trying to hide that from me, right? So, and it's funny how God allowed us to come together. See, because I know I'm the type of person, I know I have favor upon my life, and I know I am chosen by God. So I know people that come in my presence, it's for a reason. Nobody's just able to come up and be a part of my life unless, especially the type of lifestyle I was living. Now, I was writing every single day. I would get up in the morning and I would write like every day. I would just write a chapter. Not only a chapter, I would just like write a couple of chapters a day in the morning after I read my devotional. I did this for a whole year before we even got together, right? And this is like, it didn't make sense for me to get so involved with him and the activities that he used to do that I knew that I would never have a part of that, back in the hood, right, when I was growing up. The stuff that he did, I did that shit. Excuse me. I did that stuff. See, God is still working on me, okay? God is still working on me. But I did that kind of thing back in the days when I was growing up in South Central. I did that kind of, lifestyle. Listen, it wouldn't, but okay, I was out there too, okay? So anyway, I was like, okay, because he served time in prison and stuff, but it's like, people that serve time in prison, especially if they go in a certain age, especially if they go in like a youth, like say for instance, they're like 17, 18, or 21 or whatever age they go in, if they serve like 8 and 10 years and 12 years, by the time they get out, their mindset is still in that state of when they were 21, and so they get out and still on that level of being 21. So I was like, the things that he did, I did that when I was a kid, when I was, so, but I was like, I didn't tell him, like I said, because most of the time when I open up and share my story, guys would get intimidated or whoever would get intimidated, because of who I am. I'm just a person. I'm not perfect. I have faults just like everybody else. But sometimes you could intimidate men standing in your power and your strength. And so the things that he did, it didn't scare me. I mean, we was riding around, he'd be strapped. It didn't scare me. There's something scared me because I grew up in the hood. And like I said, I have a story of back then, you know what I'm saying? I did all of that. So I wasn't nothing I was too much afraid of, because I was out there, and thank God that he delivered me and changed my life. But in the process, God uses who He wants to, you know. And as I began to fall in love with Him, and He started having feelings for me, we started falling in love with each other. But His lifestyle and His commitment already, He was already committed. He was already into, a relationship, and I wasn't at that point. I wasn't. I was, I was separated and divorced my husband and just so forth like that. I was by myself, single, 100%, and he wasn't. So it really didn't. He told me a lot of lies and made up a whole bunch of stuff. And I tolerate. I remember one time what really woke me up is when he went to jail. I'm like, you at this age, nigga, who goes to jail at this age? I mean, here you are, pushing 60, nigga, and you in jail. But I see, I was ride or die. I mean, I was, I stepped back. But you know what? Sometimes God would allow us. I didn't say that He made us step back, but He would allow us sometimes to step back to help someone to go forward, you know? And that's just the way it was. And then it's funny because he used to tell me, Stephanie, I prayed for you. I asked God to send me a woman like you. He said, I always wanted a woman like you. But when He got me, He didn't know how to handle me. He really didn't. And to me, He mishandled me, on several occasions. And because it wasn't nothing He could do, He could never pull a wool over my eyes because I seen right through him the whole time I was dealing with him. But I just kind of liked him, you know what I mean? I just kind of liked him, and I wanted to give him a chance. I just wanted to just help him, because I'm like, it's more to life. There's more ways to make money. You ain't got to make money just doing, slinging nigga. You ain't doing this, doing it. No, it's more ways. You just got to trust God. And I just see, because it's like, because I always had faith, and when I accepted God in my life, it started with having faith. I was under a ministry, Bishop McClendon, for 7 years. And I remember when he first got started in the ministry, and he was on faith. He basically taught about faith and having faith. And so I had strong, immovable faith. You know what I mean? I had that kind of faith. You couldn't tell me nothing what God couldn't do. I had that kind of faith. So, and just saying all of that, for me to see him and his lack of faith is like, I felt like, if he just only knew. So I was always trying to elevate him and encourage him, and just speaking to him, because it's like in the street, you ain't got nobody to elevate you and speak into your life. But at the same time, I was losing myself, in the process. But I'm going to end the story here. Thank you for tuning in, and I will pick up on the story tomorrow. Make sure you guys like, you know, and subscribe and share my story. Okay, thank you for listening, and blessings to you all. Again, stepping in with Stephanie, story time. Thank you.